Welcome back to NGN. I am Kay Racine alongside my hosts,
Tommy Rooney
and Teddy Caputo.
We have a great show planned for you guys today, starting with sports. They're going to talk a little bit about the amazing football weekend that happened this weekend, along with some Syracuse basketball.
And then we've got news coming up, Cuse Chronicle with the Jacks. They're talking about the cabinet picks as well as the TikTok ban and more.
And on our entertainment section, which is called Cuse Lounge, we have Asha Breedlove talking about the Oscars, the Grammys, and the Super Bowl halftime show featuring Kendrick Lamar. We'll have to see what's in store there.
All this and more coming up for you guys after the break, so stay tuned.
Say go Cuse. Go Cuse. Good job, buddy.
On NGN. This is the Orange Zone for the first time this year. Basketball season is in full swing and the Super Bowl is on the horizon. I'm Andrew Watson. This is Louis Genovese. And Louis, I mentioned basketball. We'll start right here at home. What are your thoughts about the Syracuse basketball team right now?
Well, Andrew, as you said before, it turns out Syracuse basketball isn't really doing so hot right now. Last Saturday, they lost to their notorious rival Pitt. They lost 77-73. They got off to a pretty hot start, and we had J.J. Starling leading the team with 16 points, shooting 5 out of 13, and collecting 4 rebounds. And meanwhile, you have Eddie Lampkin. He had a monster game. I mean, a double-double, 10 points, 23 rebounds, and 15 of them were on the defensive side. And Andrew, this is an interesting stat that you discovered. This is the most rebounds ever collected by the third most rebounds ever collected by a Syracuse player in a game. I mean, this hasn't happened since there hasn't been a Syracuse player that's collected 20 rebounds in a game since 1989. But yeah, unfortunately, in the case of the Pitt game, there were a lot of errors by the team, especially in the second half with all the turnovers, if you ask me.
Yeah, I completely agree. But first off, you mentioned Eddie Lampkin. That was his 5th double-double in the last 6 games. He's definitely been playing really well, but the guy that really stood out for me was J.J. Starling once again. It seems like as he goes, the team goes. What are your thoughts on that?
I definitely would agree with that. I mean, he goes, the team goes. I mean, we saw that a couple weeks ago when he was really the drive that got the team going when they defeated the Notre Dame Fighting Irish at home. You know, it's also cool to mention that was his former team. He collected 22 points, and he really was that sort of like spark the team needed. And you know, it's great to see that he is still making a whole lot of progress as the season goes on. But I mean, as we're getting closer to the ACC tournament and March Madness, and Syracuse currently right now, they're like 3-6 in the ACC, and this would actually rank them 12th. And it really doesn't look like that we can expect much from this season going forward.
Yeah, it might be time to start thinking that Syracuse needs to avoid the ACC bubble to make the tournament because, Louis, the bottom 3 teams in the ACC don't make it to Charlotte this year. And if J.J. Starling has anything to say about it, Syracuse basketball will be there with a chance to make an NC State type of run in the ACC tournament. But looking at the top 5 or the top 25 in the country, who on that list really stands out to you?
Well, first off, you got a whole lot of this is a really good list. I mean, you're seeing like in the top 5 this week, you have 3 teams from the SEC. At number 1, you got Auburn, who defeated the number 6 ranked Tennessee in a close one, 53-51. And then, of course, you have Duke University, the big bad team from the ACC. They defeated Wake Forest 63-56. And then you have Iowa State from the Big 12. They defeated Arizona State 76-61. And then Alabama, who defeated LSU 80-73. And of course, Florida, who won a close one 70-69 against University of Southern Carolina. And, you know, maybe just going off a little bit off topic here, we could talk about our favorite teams from our undergrad schools. I mean, you went to the University of West Virginia. How did they do?
Well, I actually went to the University of Lynchburg, but I've been a big UVA fan my entire life. They're not very good. They're another one of those teams that's on that bubble for the ACC tournament. They only have 2 wins in the conference right now, so they're right behind Syracuse. They're right behind a couple of other teams, too. They had a bad loss to Notre Dame, which we mentioned. Syracuse just came back from a 17-point deficit to defeat Notre Dame in the JMA Wireless Dome. So maybe not the best loss to lose to the Fighting Irish by 15, but they still have an opportunity to make the ACC tournament. And, you know, I think they can do really well moving forward. And you're a St. Bonaventure's guy. The A-10 is very competitive.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, St. Bonaventure, they were off to like one of their best starts in years. They started off 14-1. I mean, the last time they started off like winning 10 games, that was the year they made the Final Four. It was 69-70. That was the final year of the Bob Lanier era. And, you know, ever since they began conference play, they are now on a 1-5 stretch. They unfortunately lost to the VCU Rams last Saturday, and it's really been a hard one for them. You know, it was great for this team to like have Woj come back to his alma mater, really get like St. Bonaventure into the spotlight, and you know, even like striking an NIL deal with the WWE, like producing the championship belts. But it's sad to see that St. Bonaventure is really taking this hit on them. You know, especially losing to teams like Fordham, Loyola, George Mason, and hopefully this team can turn around because, you know, A-10 tournament is coming up soon, and they want to try and make a push for the tournament. Now's the time.
Yeah, there's a couple of really good teams in the A-10 right at the top from Virginia. VCU, you mentioned the Rams. They beat St. Bonaventure and George Mason. Something is brewing down there in Fairfax, Virginia. But just to continue on the A-10 just a little bit more, the conference championship is at Capital One Arena, just a few miles from where George Washington plays their home games at the Charles E. Smith Center. That'll definitely be something to watch. But now we'll keep it in college sports. We'll move away from basketball. Ohio State won the national championship. And Louis, what are your thoughts on the new playoff format?
Well, honestly, Andrew, this was a whole lot of fun. I mean, it was great to see teams that didn't get a shot at making the college football playoffs, you know, in the years prior, get a shot at that. Now, we do know that Ohio State coach Ryan Day did say like he has some issues with this playoff format, you know, because of the length it goes and how it really like leaves the players all weary, and especially now they want to take like a rest period before they can start training for the NFL draft. And I mean, I don't think it's that big of a deal, but I do say that the first year of a 12-team college football playoff, I think was pretty good in my opinion.
It was definitely very interesting to watch. It kept me on the edge of my seat the entire time. But what I do want to ask you about is the top 4 seeds, automatic qualifiers, earning a bye so they don't have to play in the first round of the college football playoff. And that really hindered those teams in the playoff this year. What were your thoughts on watching those top teams that won their conferences go down in their first opportunity?
Oh my goodness. I mean, Andrew, first off, we got to talk about Oregon. I mean, Oregon, they were really dominant. Like they started off this season undefeated, and next thing you know, they win the Big Ten championship and they host Ohio State in the Rose Bowl, and they just completely fell apart. And it really just is a shock to see like a lot of those teams really get upset in that point. But again, that's just what makes college football so much fun. Like you never know who's going to pull off the upset. I mean, I don't think anyone was expecting Notre Dame to beat Penn State. And, considering years prior of how Notre Dame has been, I'd say it's been a good run for them.
Yeah, they definitely played really well to get there. And they did have a chance late, even though it really felt like a blowout. But at the end, they had a chance, and that's really all you can ask for. But one thing I will say, and then I'll get your opinion on this, is I don't think if you win your conference championship, you deserve to have an automatic qualifier into the bye. I think that should be saved for the top 4 seeds, because you saw Arizona State and Boise State, who were not top 4 teams in the country, but they had the opportunity to rest, and then it gave some people favorable matchups, talking about Penn State getting to play Boise State, Texas getting to play Arizona State. Those are matchups that you would expect those teams that won the first round to get into it. And so what I think they should do is almost completely ditch the automatic qualifier. But if you win your conference, you're in. But that does not mean that if you win your conference as a top 5 ranked team of that category, that does not mean you deserve to get that bye. And what are your thoughts on that?
I mean, Andrew, it's definitely an interesting topic when you bring that up. I mean, like winning your conference, I mean, that's still a massive feat to accomplish, and really like moving your way through and through all the way to that conference title is really what make a team season, really kind of like establish that. I just feel like, when you've worked so far and you get to that, you climb that mountain why shouldn't you at least get somewhat of a bye?
Well, I think it should be a lot like the NCAA tournament in basketball, where you get the AQ, you're in, but that does not mean you get the bye. And I think that's something they should do going forward. But, we can agree to disagree in that sense. But talking about other big football games, the conference championship games in the NFL were this past weekend. I know both of our teams lost, the Commanders and the Bills. So how did you think the Bills played? What could they have done better? And just what led to the Chiefs going back to another Super Bowl?
Andrew, Josh Allen and this team, they were always looking to upset the Chiefs, but something always happens to them. They just didn't play their best football. They did not make the big plays, something that they've been doing all season long. I mean, this is a season that everyone had the Bills out like completely for the Super Bowl. I mean, they thought it's a transitional year. They're going to rebuild a little bit. They might even be lucky if they make the playoffs. But instead, like they fight all their way back to the AFC Championship game for the first time since 2020. And yet, here's what happens. I mean, their first drive is a 3-and-out, and later on they would score on a James Cook rushing touchdown. James Cook has been phenomenal this season. He's definitely been a top 5 running back. And they've had 2 failed 2-point conversions. And of course, there's also that controversial 4th down attempt by Josh Allen, but we're going to get to that in a little bit. And really, like one thing you got to know is that this Kansas City defense, they were ready. They were ready to take on Buffalo's supreme offense. They were able to shut the Bills down in the moments that they needed to, and really just have Patrick Mahomes and his offense, led by Mahomes and also Xavier Worthy. I definitely think the Bills might be regretting not taking him in the draft this year and just letting him go to KC at this point. Really just let them get the points they need to hold the Bills off.
Yeah, and I mean, it was a good one. Again, on the edge of my seat, loved watching that game, but you mentioned that 4th down call where he was just short or spotted just short. I just want to get your thoughts on what that call was, because I think we might disagree about the officiating and result, like making the result of that game.
Well, Andrew, one thing to know is that it was definitely a difficult call. You know, you just saw from things like the camera angles, the fact that you saw a couple receivers, not a couple receivers, excuse me, so a couple D linemen. You saw Chris Jumpsort blocking Josh Allen. You know, you have former officials saying that Josh may have gotten a third of the ball over the line, and you know, it's just a difficult call to make. And I guess there wasn't really enough evidence to suggest that Josh did get it over the line. And personally, I don't think he did either. I mean, that means a lot. It's a lot coming from a Bills fan like me.
Yeah, I think that it didn't really have a huge outcome on the game, the officiating as a whole. We've seen the Chiefs in situations where they might get the benefit of the doubt, and that's why they win. But I don't think this was why. I think the Chiefs were genuinely the better team, and you can agree or disagree with me about that one. But the Chiefs played well. They deserve to be there. They're back in the Super Bowl for the third time. That's pretty incredible. But they're going to meet the Philadelphia Eagles, who absolutely demolished my Commanders. And that one was not fun to watch for me, but still a great season for those guys down there in the district. Louis, what were your thoughts on that game?
I mean, honestly, it was definitely an interesting one. I mean, the fact that these two teams ended the regular season split 1-1, and Jaden Daniels, you know, having what might be the greatest season for a rookie quarterback of all time. Meanwhile, you had the Eagles, who were phenomenal. You know, just Saquon Barkley just running all over the place. He was absolutely dominant. You know, he had 205 yards, 2 touchdowns on the ground. And let's not forget Jalen Hurts. He's also had a good season. You still have that elite receiving core in A.J. Brown and Devonta Smith. Oh, and Andrew, you know, this was before we came on the desk, but I got some news that, you know, sources are saying that Brandon Graham could actually return for the big game.
That would definitely be very interesting. And speaking of the big game, I want to hear your prediction of what's going to happen. What do the Chiefs have to do? You mentioned their great defense, but what do they have to do to stop the two-headed monster of Saquon Barkley and Jalen Hurts?
Well, definitely do what they did against Buffalo, you know. I mean, they got to play strong with the blitz. And, you know, honestly, like kind of in that game, you know, when James Cook was just about to get hot, you know, you've obviously saw him had that great reaching touchdown at the goal line. It was a shock that Buffalo wasn't utilizing him as much. But, you know, you got to, I think at this point now, like, how do I imagine stopping Saquon Barkley? Really only one team has done that, and I think that's kind of like the Pittsburgh Steelers. They sort of limited him a little bit. And really, at this point now, I just say, like, you can't hold him back. And I say maybe if Saquon Barkley just comes in this game and starts steamrolling the way he's done all season, maybe the Eagles are the team that stops Kansas City from getting the three-peat. But, you know, honestly, I think for some people, I've already heard the people saying that this is a Super Bowl that I think no one cares who wins, because I don't think really anyone besides their own fan base really likes them.
Yeah, I completely agree that the fan bases are definitely one-sided, opposed to the country. Country doesn't really want to watch. The boycotting going on, trending on Twitter right now, maybe not something that I believe in, because I'm going to watch it. I'm going to watch every second. It's going to be an incredible game. Who do you think comes out on top?
I would like to say the Philadelphia Eagles, with the way that they've been playing offensively and defensively. I think they are definitely a complete unit. However, Andrew, you know, you can't always rule out the Chiefs. You know, Patrick Mahomes has shown time and time and time again that sometimes it doesn't matter how you perform well in the regular season. All that matters is that you get to the postseason and you save your best for that. He's got an elite unit: Xavier Worthy, DeAndre Hopkins, Marquise Brown, Travis Kelce. You know, we don't know how much longer he's going to be staying with his team for, but let's not forget, you know, the defense is still playing at a really solid rate. Andy Reid, he's still he's probably at this point now, I'd say a top 5 coach in NFL history. I can't rule out the Chiefs, and I think I have this feeling that ultimately Mahomes is going to pull off what has never been done before and have the three-peat.
I completely agree. I think the Chiefs will come out on top, but that's all we've got for the Orange Zone. I'm Andrew Watson, alongside...
And I'm Louis Genovese.
Coming up next will be the Cuse Chronicle with the two Jacks, Jack McGuire and Jack Ziskin.
Say go Cuse. Good job, buddy.
Good evening and welcome to the Cuse Chronicle. I'm Jack McGuire.
And I'm Jack Ziskin.
And if someone had told you a few months ago that a deal between Hamas and Israel was on the table and imminent, you probably would call them an idiot. But as of right now, it's looking like phase one has started and officially underway. If we can get that graphic up on the screen, a lot of people don't know this, but there are actually 3 phases to this new ceasefire deal between Hamas and Israel. Phase one, as you can see, involves Hamas releasing 33 hostages, including female civilians and soldiers, children, and civilians over 50. Israel, on the other hand, has to release 30 Palestinian prisoners for each civilian hostage and 50 for each female soldier. As well as that, there's also a halt to the fighting while Israeli forces would move out of the Strip to the Outer Banks, and displaced Palestinians begin returning home while more aid enters the area. Now, there are 2 phases after that, obviously, but with phase one starting, I don't know, I think this is a pretty good start to it. What do you think, Jack?
It's a sensitive time. It's a delicate situation, obviously. Now, one of the things we're going to have to watch out for is Bibi Netanyahu's political coalition. He is in a government that is comprised of multiple political parties, and one of those parties, Jewish Power, has threatened to pull out over this deal. That would leave him with a very slim majority and could leave him reliant on a minority party to keep this deal alive. There are indications that would be the case, but it's not exactly the most ideal thing. And then the second thing we have to worry about is 8 of the 33 hostages that were supposed to be released are unfortunately no longer with us. And that's going to have a serious impact on these very tense hostage exchanges.
That's a very good point. And so this phase one is 42 days. Obviously, it started on January 19th, so we're just getting into it. But at the same time, as you said, there are fragments of the Israeli government that didn't want this to happen, right? This deal's been on the table since May, and obviously there's been no agreement, but Hamas agreed to it earlier on, but Israel was kind of holding out. Steve Wyckoff, who, by the way, was building casinos in Vegas, like the Fontainebleau Hotel, a few months ago, he's now in the thick of it. He had a meeting with Netanyahu, and after that meeting ended, it seems like he put a lot of pressure on Netanyahu to accept this. Now, I will say, as you said before, there are fragments of the Israeli government that aren't on board with this. One of them being Ben Gvir, the Minister of National Security in Israel, said that he would pull out of government if phase two of this deal went through.
I think it's, again, it could end up being a situation where you have a minority government, which as Americans, we don't live in a parliamentary system, we live in a presidential system, and it's a very different style, you know. Their government's united under their legislature, essentially, so that's where Netanyahu derives his power from politically.
Yeah, and it's interesting. I'm curious to hear what you have to say about this. Brett McGurk, who's been a longtime D.C. national security advisor, been working on this for a couple of years now. And then he and Wyckoff kind of went in together on this and struck this deal right as Biden's administration was ending. And obviously now Trump has taken helm of the government, and we're going to see what happens. But I'm curious as to know, like, what do you think is going on behind the scenes? Because in my opinion, first of all, I'd love to see what happened as to how we were able to put pressure on them, right? Is it us saying that maybe we would have Israel's back if they were to try and annex the West Bank? Is it us saying, hey, we'll look out for you if you end up going to war with Iran? I don't know this stuff. I don't know. That remains to be seen. But I am curious as to what happened behind the scenes.
I think it was, you know, you have a veteran national security advisor, obviously, and you have a change of the guard, transition of power. That's part of our democracy, and I think that there was definitely a desire not to deal with Donald J. Trump. They wanted to deal with President Biden, who's maybe viewed as a little bit more, or former President Biden, I should say, who's maybe viewed as a little bit more predictable.
Right. Well, there's a lot to get to for the rest of the show, but yeah, we'll keep you updated for the next 40 days as to what's going on with phase one. Next on the deal, we've got a lot of Senate hearings this week for Trump cabinet picks. I'm curious to know which one you think is going to be the most tense and who has the least likely chance of getting through.
I personally think at this point in the game, everyone's getting through. I think that Tulsi Gabbard's is going to be the most tense. Could it come down to a tiebreaker like it did for Secretary of Defense? Yes. And I think that's what you have to worry about, right? Because Gabbard's got some opinions on the Cyber Security and Infrastructure Security Agency, which are going to be a problem for her.
And I said this earlier on in episode 1. I knew it would be hard for Gabbard to get through. I do think she's going to get through as of right now, but I think the Republicans put a lot of pressure on her when it came to some of her past beliefs. Right? She was against FISA Section 702, which basically gave the government an ability to gain intelligence on people outside the country that were non-U.S. citizens. And obviously, you got guys like Jamie Langford and Tom Cotton who are more on the war hawk end of the Republican Party that obviously they hear that stuff and it drives them berserk. So I think they put some intense internal pressure on her to kind of, hearken away from that kind of thing. And now she kind of backtracked on some of those thoughts.
She's got to get through committee. It's a 9-8 split there. One of the votes to watch out for is going to be John Cornyn of Texas, and you also have Susan Collins of Maine, who might be fighting for her political career in 2 years. If she's defeated, it'll be in committee. It won't be in front of the entire Senate.
Right. And it's funny, too, because the Republican Party is changing, right? You've got factions that are still on that more like, okay, let's make sure our security is there. Let's do everything we can to limit any kind of terror threats. But at the same time, you've got a faction of the party that is looking to kind of get more into libertarian territory where, they're against that kind of thing. And I think that's part of why you saw a lot of support for Gabbard earlier on. But I think she's got to kind of maintain her original basis of ideology if she wants to keep, a lot of that fan base.
I think that it's difficult for her just based on where she is because, obviously you mentioned the changing of the Republican Party on foreign policy, right? Well, that's kind of been mirrored across the globe. Ironically, it's being pushed by, big tech companies. We've seen Elon Musk. He's been wading into Germany. We don't even got time for that this week, right? But, there's this almost global consensus on globalism being bad, That's where it's kind of been pushing, especially in foreign policy.
And you see both parties kind of agreeing to that as of right now, right? I mean, I think saying you're in favor of the establishment is no longer popular in either party, right? And so it's funny, and that kind of leads me into our next segment on foreign aid. Donald Trump obviously cut a lot of the foreign aid out as it pertains to U.S. aid, which gives $22 billion a year to countries around the world for different purposes. But as of right now, he left a couple countries on the table, including Israel, Jordan, and Egypt. He originally left Ukraine on, but then signed an executive order this past week cutting off aid to them as well. So I'm curious to hear what you think about all this.
It's a drop in the bucket, Jack. And the reason I say this is it's $22 billion. Our government budget ranges in the trillions. And the reality is this. Ukraine's still going to get military aid. That's something that Trump said he would cut on the campaign trail. Clearly, he has not followed through on that so far. That'll be something to watch out for. But it's very different to campaign than govern. And we saw this with the first Trump administration.
Right. And, if we can get the graphic up on the screen explaining why he did it, his latest executive order reads, "The United States foreign aid industry and bureaucracy are not aligned with American interests and in many cases antithetical to American values. They serve to destabilize world peace by promoting ideas in foreign countries that are directly inverse to harmonious and stable relations internal to and among countries." So yeah, this is interesting. One of the things I looked at too was, okay, so we cut it off from everyone except for Egypt, Jordan, and Israel. More I looked at it, with Israel, Marco Rubio actually signed a bill in 2022 extending aid to Israel under any and all circumstances until 2027. But then I was also like, okay, we don't really have an Egyptian lobby in the United States. So where does Egypt fit into this equation? And I look back, and it actually goes back to the Camp David Accords passed by President Jimmy Carter in the late 70s, in which at that point, Egypt didn't recognize Israel as a country. And in order to get Egypt on the train and we wanted peace between both countries. And in order to do that, we had these accords in which we would give foreign aid to Egypt basically as well.
Well, I mean, we could have our own show on the Middle East, right? But as it stands, I think we're clock's ticking on us.
Yeah,
right
the
now.
clock's ticking for this week. But tune in next week at 5. We're looking forward to seeing you. Thank you very much. Have a good one.
Say go Cuse. Good job, buddy.
Welcome back to NGN. This is Cuse Lounge. I'm Asha Breelove, and let's get into some entertainment. Now, the 97th Academy Awards is taking place on March 2nd, 2025. Smash hits from all over the year have been nominated in all categories. But the movie that's been all over everyone's lips all year, Wicked. Wicked has came in with 10 nominations, one including Best Picture. Also including Best Picture, co-stars Cynthia Erivo and Ariana Grande have swept the category with Best Actress and Best Actress Supporting Role. Now, if Cynthia Erivo wins in the Best Actress category, she will go under with the long list of actors and actresses that have acquired EGOT status. EGOT meaning Emmy, Grammy, Oscar, and Tony. The 67th Grammy Awards take place on this Sunday, one of music's biggest nights. Music from all genres already take stage. Some people that are performing are coming from the Best New Artist category, such as Sabrina Carpenter and Doechii. With Super Bowl in the air, all eyes are on Kendrick Lamar. Back in September, the NFL announced that Kendrick Lamar will be headlining the Apple Music Super Bowl halftime show. Now, Kendrick is not new to this stage. Back in 2022, he performed the Super Bowl halftime show along with Dr. Dre. Now, this time, he is bringing former TDE member SZA. Billboard has a new cover star, and it's Kai Cenat. Now, this influencer is not a music artist, but he has been dubbed the most trusted the most trusted hang for music's biggest stars. TikTok was taken away, and not even 24 hours, it was brought back. Now, but here's the kicker. Although TikTok may be taken away, you can't re-download it on your devices. But people have been selling their devices to eBay for prices that are coming up to $50,000. I don't know about y'all, but personally, I wouldn't sell my phone. This has been, I'm Asha Breelove, and this has been Cuse Lounge.
And that wraps up today's show of NGN. We will be back next Monday for a new show. See you guys next Monday.
See you next Monday.